Greetings, my name is Kevin Matthews. I want to welcome you back to the Tax Academy, where class is still in session because the learning never stops. Basically, today we're going to talk about, and again, I've said this in a couple of videos. Sometimes when I'm trying to choose topics that I think are going to be very interesting for us to discuss, I come across one that's just like, you know what, I think that's an interesting topic. It's not necessarily that the massive amount of the world is seeing, this issue, but it is something that it's kind of fun, but it's also something that periodically comes up in cocktail parties or social gatherings where people say once they figure out I'm a CPA, they want to ask all these tax deduction related issues, and I always find it fascinating. This one specifically, I've heard this a lot. It's deducting the cost of a spouse on a business trip, and the reason why this oftentimes comes up is that especially if you work in a very good, we talked about this in a previous video that we shot, is that if you're working as a consultant. So for example, say I'm a consultant with a large consulting company, and they come to me and they say, Kevin, you live in the Washington, D.C. metro area. We're going to send you on site to a client who's actually in Indianapolis, and you're going to be there for 7 months. Okay. And I kind of go, you know what, guys? I've been working for you for, 10, 15 years. And my son, he's off in college. My wife is left home alone. This is, kind of driving us, crazy that I continue to do these things. I would actually like to have her brought with me on this business trip. And the question of the day is, can you do it? And the answer is you can, but it's extremely restrictive. First of all, in the situation that I'm talking about, it would not be possible. And the reason is that she's not an employee. And then, and of course, one of the easy workarounds would be, okay, company, hire her. Well, it doesn't really work that way either. The thing that you have to understand is that your spouse has to be an employee. Then you can deduct the travel costs. However, the trip that she or he takes with you must serve a bona fide business purpose. Okay. So merely having your spouse for some incidental business service, such as typing notes, isn't enough to establish a business purpose. Now, here's the thing. If you're a consultant and say your specialization is in the oil industry, and they send you out to a company that works in the oil industry, and your wife also happens to be a chemical engineer, and part of what she's going to do is also facilitate on the consulting end of this, different story. Okay, so again, there's this, there's sort of the absolutely this is stupid, wouldn't qualify, and then you have the absolutely this is correct, would qualify, and then and to be honest, 90% of what happens in the tax industry, it's that in the middle gray area that we're always worried about, because that's where clients kind of go, if I just pull this a little bit more, or if I just massage this into the right, okay, it doesn't always, and we always sort of talk with our clients and we say, hey, you know what? If you have to sort of massage things, it's probably not right. Okay, I mean that's where your internal gut just ought to be telling people that says, okay, yeah, we shouldn't be doing this. Okay, now there are certain times where there's enough gray area, and you kind of go, look, we're going to do this, and we just want to find out if we can get a deduction off of it. There's times to go aggressive, and there's times not to go aggressive. Okay, and it always depends. I would say with a lot of these rules, because this gets eyeballed by the IRS significantly, probably not the aggressive area that you want to go into. But that's just me. The other thing that I would suggest is that if you're having a question of whether you can deduct the cost of your spouse coming with you on the business trip, it's probably something you need to seek professional tax advice on, because we're going to basically be able to tell you, yeah, absolutely, that's going to work out, or no, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen this time. It's just some other things that we wanted to talk about. If your spouse's travel does satisfy the test, normal deductions for business travel can be claimed. They include costs of transportation, meals, lodging, incidentals such as dry cleaning and phone calls. Now, if they're married, something that sometimes will end up happening is, people would basically say, well, if my wife and I are going there, we should be able to qualify for 2 hotel rooms. my personal opinion, guys, is that if you got the rules to work in your behavior, it's probably not a good idea to stretch this any further. I would be very hesitant to allow employees to do that, because I mean, here's the thing, folks. If you do this and you end up getting audited by the IRS, it's on you. So you want to make sure that you're protecting the company, because remember, you know, the owners of the company are really the agents of the company. I mean, that's what we have to do, and we have to protect that. And so the other thing is that let's, for the final talk about, is that if they don't qualify, you may be able to deduct substantial portions of the trip. This is because the rules don't require you to allocate 50% of your costs to the spouse. You only need to allocate his or her additional costs for him or her. So, for example, the hotel room for a single room isn't that much lower than the cost of a double. You can figure out what the two are, and you can say, okay, we can deduct this cost of the single. Sometimes some hotels, and I've been to a few that have done this, the room cost isn't going to be that different. I mean, if you get single queen size bed and you got one person in there versus two people in there, and you know they know that the two people are married, they may not even charge more for it. And if that ends up being the case, then you can deduct the full cost of the spouse. Another thing that it is that if you drive your own car or rental, it would be fully deductible. Why? If you're going to drive a car, like say I'm going to drive a car from Washington, D.C. to Memphis, the cost of that's probably going to be this. I mean, not probably. It is the same whether I'm driving one car with my spouse or without my spouse. So that's still going to be a fully deductible expense. Of course, if public transportation is used, and for meals, separate costs incurred wouldn't be deductible. So, say for example, if I take, I'm taking Amtrak, which I know most people on the West Coast are like, well, Amtrak, does that still exist? Yeah, it exists. Here on the East Coast, it gets used quite a lot, actually. But if obviously if I'm buying two tickets, one for me, one for my spouse, I don't get to write off anything for the spouse. Okay, so I think that it's common sense, and that's really what this rule is. It's a common sense sort of thing. If it smells like a duck, it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, chances are it is a duck. And if you try to take that duck and make it into a chicken, yeah, I understand they're both birds, but duck has a much different taste than chicken does. And as a person who also has a hobby of cooking Chinese food a lot, I can vouch for that. I've eaten my very, very, very much fair share of duck. So you want to make sure that you're following the rules and that you're doing the best thing possible. So that's all I got to say about that. Again, my name is Kevin Matthews, and I want to thank you for coming to the Tax Academy. Our class is still in session because the learning never stops. If you have any questions you want to ask of me, you can go ahead and put it in the comment box below. Or if you want to do a more personalized question about this or talk about a specific case of this, you can reach out to me at my website, www.betasolutioncpa.com. Again, that's www.betasolutioncpa.com, and I'll be happy to address that. Something else, if you like the video, please go ahead and hit like, and then if you like the video series, please go ahead and hit subscribe so we can get you some updates, and then we can get our numbers up so that we can spread the message of taxes and try to get rid of the ignorance that takes place with this. Again, thank you very much.